All right, Dave, kick it off with a great story of the rich and famous here.
Okay, I got a Bob Dylan story that I've always just found extremely fascinating, and it's not that old. About maybe 2010, he was in Winnipeg, and he was playing at the MTS Center, and he ended up going out with his manager on the so-called kind of this underground Neil Young tour, because Neil Young, as a teenager, lived in Winnipeg and went to junior high and high school there, and then left from there to kind of make it. So there's a few homes that Neil and his mother had rented or lived in, etc. So you can kind of go to those, and there's the Crestview or the Crescentwood, Ryan Crescentwood Center or whatever, where they would have played or something. And anyway, so Bob Dylan goes to Neil Young's boyhood home on Grosvenor Avenue, and he's standing there looking up at the house with his manager, and he's in like snakeskin boots and leather. And the owner comes home, who happens to be a Dylan fan. He comes home with groceries, and he just looks, and it's like, my God, Bob Dylan standing in my front yard. And Dylan's looking up at the third floor, which is what used to be the rental. So this guy knows, about Dylan, and he knows that he doesn't want to spook him, right? So he's like, oh, hey. And he goes, what are you doing here? And Bob's like, yeah, is this where Neil Young used to live? And he's like, yeah, back in the 60s. He lived here in the early 60s. He goes, oh, yeah. He goes, would you like to come in and take a look? He goes, yeah, sure, I'd like that. So he comes into the house, and they go up into the top bedroom, which was Neil Young's, and now it's like a 7-year-old girl's, and it's all painted pink. And Dylan sits in this little single bed, and he looks out the window, and he says to the owner of the house, he goes, well, this must have been where Neil Young thought about writing songs and getting out of here. And then they had little tea, and then he just left, and it was all confirmed in the paper and everything. He was also incidentally staring out south towards Hibbing, Minnesota, which is like parallel from Manitoba, kind of in that way, which is kind of cool, and home of Bob Dylan. And then a month later, he rubbernecks outside of Bruce Springsteen's boyhood home and gets arrested for suspicion, because it's a bad area now where the boss grew up. And he doesn't have his ID, so they have to take him to his tour bus where he goes in and gets his ID. Like, how nuts is this guy? He's probably like probably the biggest star, musician out there. He's so recluse, it's made him maybe even bigger. And he's just out there following other. He's a fan of other guys, and he's like, I have done that. Ryan and I have hung out in front of Neil's home a lot. We used to camp there, actually.
Yeah. Well, we were smart. We brought our ID with us. So.
Right. Yeah, so I just thought that was just a story that, I don't think it gets enough attention. You can Google that family. You take a Google, you can check it out. But there's a lot of info on there about it. It's a pretty cool story.
How cool would it be if he showed up at your house and you were just like, oh, Bob Dylan's standing outside your house, and it's like as if you wouldn't invite him in. It'd be, well, I'm just going to bring my groceries in now.
Yeah.
Stay out there and admire the house from outside.
I give you a CD.
Crazy. So that's rich and famous. I was, there's little stories you could tell about Kanye and like Kim Kardashian when they had their child's first birthday. They rented Disneyland. The entire Disneyland.
Holy
how
cow,
much would that cost? Like, you'd have to pay at least what Disneyland makes in a day to rent it out. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's millions.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
and the little fucker's not going to remember any of that. He's
no. Little fucker.
We got some good photos with Donald Duck or whoever, Goofy or whoever the fuck those are. But it's a couple good stories. One of my favorite ones, and I know you guys know this, but it's the Rolling Stones with Keith and Ronnie Wood when they were backstage and they were doing a bunch of drugs and stuff. And the manager called up, and this is during the 80s, and it said, hey, the police are here. And then they freaked out. They're like, holy shit. So they flushed all their drugs down the toilet, and they were freaking out. And then moments later, Sting and Andy Summers walk in. Oh, the police. Shit.
Oh, I love that.
The best thing is Keith and Ronnie didn't know who they were and went, all right, don't bust us, man.
Oh, yeah, that's funny.
And then Sting said, how's your willy, mate?
Oh my God,
that is a great story.
I got another one. I don't know if you know about this, but Zappa, because I'm such a huge Zappa fan. You know, Dave talked about Bob, so I'll talk about Zappa. They in 1971 they played a show in I can't remember what it was, somewhere in Germany, I think, like that. And a crazed fan shot a flare gun off, and it went off, and it ended up blowing up the heating system of this venue, and the whole fucking thing burnt to a crisp.
Wow.
And like people were injured and stuff. You know, people got away. The concert obviously was over. And the next band that was supposed to play there was Deep Purple, and they were on their way there, and they just saw this smoke going across the water, across this lake, and they wrote smoke on the water because of that. And it happened at a Zappa show.
That's in Montreux, Switzerland, hence the opening line. We all came into Montreux.
Right.
You guys are wondering what that means. Yeah. That's awesome.
So,
that's awesome.
And then 6 days later, Zappa's at a show. He's playing a show at the Rainbow.
Nice.
In
Callback,
London.
tie-in.
Right, it's in London, but still a Rainbow Theater. It's pretty cool. So loosely related. And they go up and they do their encore. And so this is 6 days later. He does an encore, and he does I Want to Hold Your Hand for some weird reason. He always has this kind of thing where he kind of mocked the Beatles, but he also like loved the Beatles. Like he did I'm the Walrus, like full orchestral version, which is amazing.
Yeah.
If you can check it out on YouTube, it's pretty cool. But anyway, so they do that song, and this jealous fan gets up because I guess his girlfriend was attracted to Zappa, and gets up there and pushes him.
That's
Zappa
a first,
falls...
isn't it?
What's that?
Nothing. I said that's a first, isn't it?
Yeah.
I never saw him as a ladies' man. But...
No. Well, you know. He did all right. I think he did all right. He's got all kinds of stories about it. But anyway, this crazy fan pushes him like 15 feet, falls into the orchestra pit. He basically looks like his neck is broken. He gashed his chin. He's got a crushed larynx. He had a hole in the back of his head, a broken rib, fractured leg. One of his arms was paralyzed. Like they thought he was dead. He was in a wheelchair for a whole year. And after that, one of his legs was shorter than the other. And he actually has one of his songs is called Dancing Fool. And he's got the lyrics are, I don't know much about dancing. That's why I got this song. One of my leg is shorter than the other, and both of my feet's too long. I course along, right along with them. I got no natural rhythm, but I go out dancing every night, hoping one day I might get it right. But anyway, so that's kind of crazy.